Okay, so now we're going to move into a discussion of tissues of the body. And so just to remind you where we're at and what we're looking at, here's the screen here. We started out at the beginning of the semester with atoms. We combine atoms to make molecules, small and large. And then we combine large molecules together, and if they have a common function, we call them a cell. And so now what we're looking at is groups of cells that work together for a common function, and that is called a tissue. And so this is the level that we're working at this lesson. Now you're having the lab lesson first because I think it's a little bit simpler. So we're going to start with the lab, which has kind of a base level of information. And then next week you'll have the lecture portion on tissues, and that will add some additional details and more complexity. Okay. So if we're starting with the 4 types of tissues, these are the 4 types: epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous. So if we look here on this slide, this is showing us a cartoon representation of the 4 different types of tissue. Now, so we have epithelial, connective, muscle, and neural. So just to give you a brief overview of each of the types, epithelial, we're going to find it primarily 2 locations, lining a surface or lining a gland. Now, the word surface may not be just what you normally think about. So certainly here, my skin areas, this is going to be a surface of my body. And so the top tissue here is always going to be epithelium. But you have to also think about other surfaces. So it turns out the inside of my mouth, that is a surface. Okay, the inside of my nose, that is a surface. But actually those surfaces for the mouth and the nose are going to go deep, deep inside the body. So technically, the smallest parts deep inside of my lungs, the smallest tubes that lead down into my lungs, they're open to the outside. So they are a surface. So they will be lined by epithelial tissue. You can actually also think the tubing that goes from mouth all the way to anus is technically a surface that is outside of the body. And so that is lined by epithelial tissue. And to help you visualize that a little bit, let me move here. So this right here is a tape thing, okay? And let's pretend for a minute that this is my body standing up and down, okay? Now, right here, this hole on this side would be the entrance to my mouth, and the exit on the other side, okay, would be the anus. So all of this is technically located outside the body. So the part that is inside would actually be those body cavities, okay, where all of your, where all of the, or many of the organs are going to be located, okay. So these body cavities, all right, are technically inside the body, but the outside surface that we often think of, skin, etc., is a surface, but so is that tubing that goes all the way from mouth and anus. That is technically outside the body, okay? And so you can think of other surfaces going up into the urinary system, the urinary bladder. That's a tubing that's technically going to be lined with epithelium. It's a surface. It's outside the body. So you can think of all of those different tubings. Another tubing that's going to be lined with epithelial tissue is actually your blood vessels. So the inside of those tubes, that's a surface, and it's going to be lined with epithelial tissue. And in fact, we're actually going to find that the outside covering, even of all of your internal organs, all of your body cavities, those are internal surfaces as well. And those internal surfaces will be lined with epithelial tissue. Okay? So surfaces, and then glands. So the surface of that gland where it's going to secrete something is also lined by epithelial tissue. Now muscle tissue, we're going to find 3 types: skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. And the main thing that will be important for each of these 3 types is they are designed to contract. Okay. And another one that we have is neural tissue. We've already discussed this in depth. You'll have your functional unit, which is your neuron, and then you're going to have all your neuroglia. So those are those supporting cells, and all of those combine together to form your neural tissue that make up your brain, your spinal cord, your nerves, your ganglia, all of that stuff we've been talking about. The type of tissue that's probably the most diverse type is going to be your connective tissue. And the connective tissue is going to have a lot of different functions, and it's pretty varied. So some connective tissues we actually think of as packing material. They help kind of be the glue that holds everything together. Other connective tissues, such as bone and cartilage, they're going to be more support and structure. They're, if you think about it, our bones are kind of what helps us to not be a puddle of goo on the floor. And so those connective tissues are really more about providing support, structure, and in some cases, a very important function of protection, particularly protection from some sort of mechanical impact. And then the last function of connective tissue, there's actually some fluid connective tissues, blood and lymph, and we'll talk more about those and their functions when we get there. But basically you can think those fluids help connect the different parts of the body by transporting materials between a lot of the different tissues. Okay, so that is generally the function, the 4 different types of tissues, where they're found and what their functions are. And here's an activity to start you thinking about what are these connective tissue functions.